Hello, my name is Edwin Escobar, and I will focus on special needs groups and their significance in disasters. Okay, so the information contained in this oral presentation is intended to help emergency management students develop comprehensive emergency plans. They include individuals with special needs or who may be particularly vulnerable during hazardous events. In communities across our nations, they are out there. And because of their unique characteristics, such individuals pictured like on this slide are generally not included in a community emergency planning process. So what is it? You can see the different names they have here: special needs population. I'm going to generalize all of this and use the term special needs groups because it's the most common terminology. And you can see it includes all these other types of populations. I can tell you that these individuals will also be impacted and are challenged from public information and warnings to sheltering and feeding. Know the community, know the demographics in order to address short-term requirements for these individuals to a permanent solution and address the gaps in accommodating them. In the following slide, we will deep dive into the population. So referencing the National Preparedness Goal of 2015, disability is a physical or mental impairment that can limit one or more major life activities. Although we tend to think disability one way, emergency managers should expand this spectrum to include pregnant women, individuals who have acute and chronic medical conditions, the elderly, children, folks from diverse cultures, individuals with limited proficiency in English, and so forth. But why is this important to know? The answer is simple: because they are part of our community. If you look at these statistics, they compose a good number of the affected population. For example, just look at the example. Those with hearing disabilities are broken into those who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, those who do not speak, and then there's a challenge of communicating with them. Highlighted in red are other groups such as low-income residents without vehicles or adequate monetary resources to take protective action when warned. In emergency management phases such as preparedness and mitigation, special needs groups require more focus than your average individual before, during, and after disasters. Key functional areas include for them is really to maintain their independence, consistent communication, medical care, and looking at transportation. The third bullet really outlines those with mobility disabilities. If you look at it, again, if you break it down, there's folks in wheelchairs, canes, crutches, or even a walker. But I'd like to share another group of ideas that could focus on communication, and that could be having large print and audio for persons who are blind or have low vision, interpreter services for the deaf and hard or hearing, telephonic interpreter services, bilingual staff, picture boards, captioning of televised messages, translation of written emergency information into other languages, short, simple communication scripts repeated frequently. So if you look at all those examples, we're accommodating for our population, definitely in these critical phases. In response and recovery, we need to think of the amount of training that is required for the first responders in dealing with special needs groups. The training in evacuating this population, the search and rescue for this population, and the reintegration, those are just a few of the missions that require a cultural shift in addressing these individuals. Just look at the examples of those taking prescription medicines or children with inhalers for asthma. So if you look at some of the lessons learned, throughout history, it really includes the obvious, not expanding the spectrum of the affected populations to include special needs groups. And as a result, they just did not receive the required information, were not evacuated, unable to access shelters, failed to receive medical services, and so forth. But what can we do? I'd like to highlight the first and most important bullet, in my opinion, is really include these people with special needs, not only in planning, but also in exercises. And I'm a big proponent of exercises because that's when you can actually have your worst case scenarios play out and look at the resources and the capability gaps. The last bullet is just as important. Emergency managers need to team up with those experts regarding the broad spectrum of special needs groups. And that is important because the emergency manager has enough on his plate. But if he could leverage those key stakeholders like these experts in disabilities, they can really help the coordination and the resourcing to accommodate them. So in conclusion, disasters can really change anyone's life. There are approximately 49 million Americans with disabilities and more that are just not pre-identified. And surviving a disaster may just be the beginning of a greater struggle. The key to surviving and recovering from a crisis is preparation. The takeaway from this oral presentation is having that hard talk among leaders and experts of the disabled communities, the media, the local, state, and federal emergency planners. At your leisure, please watch this video when you can. It hits the spot. Does a much better job than me. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for hearing me out. Press stop recording.
And then you're done.
No.